Good morning, TSC ladies, and welcome to our TSC Women's Fall Speaker Series. It's great to be back with all of you and have Pastor Teresa and Cindy Delena with us today. For those who are joining for the first time, my name is Michelle Tong, and I do have the honor to introduce you to our guest speakers who are sharing part 2 of their conversation from earlier this summer. So for those of you who have already registered, you'll already be on the email list for the continuing speakers for the rest of the fall series. And if you know anyone who would like to join and has not registered, please let them know to go to our website and they'll be able to find the Connect group to join us. And today, like I said, we have Cindy Delena with us. She is the wife of our senior pastor, Pastor Tim Delena, and Pastor Teresa Conlon, who is president of Summit International School of Ministry. She's joining us from Pennsylvania, and of course, Cindy from Louisiana. So ladies, welcome back. It's great to see you. I know we had a couple of conversations in June, but not all the questions were addressed and everyone kind of wanted to hear more. So we're really excited to find out a little bit more about both of you through today's interview. So thank you so much. And Pastor Teresa, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. And hi, Cindy. Hey, Cindy, you and I get to catch up on Zoom with everybody listening, which I think it's kind of fun, but it is great to see you and you're looking great. And just there has been so much interest in the couple of questions that we're going to be talking about and you're going to get to answer. So much interest around this. And so I'm really excited what you have to share because it's a story for the ages. But you know, it's often said that if you want to fast track to know somebody, just ask them their salvation story. So that's what we'd like to do today. How did you, Cindy, get saved?
Well, it was a very interesting story because I've always grown up looking for God, but never really had anyone talk to me about God. I went to Bible school, like vacation Bible schools in the summer with all of my friends. I would just tag along. And my mom and I joined a church when I was in 8th grade because I asked her, I was like, why don't we go to church? We need to go to church. But I never had that relationship with God that I was looking for. And I graduated college. I was working at a bank. I was being fast tracked to leadership. I had a house, a car, a dog. You know, I had all the prerequisites of why I should be, you know, just furiously happy. And just was kind of like, what's missing? There's something missing. I don't get it. I have all this stuff. What is missing? And went on a loan call one day to a church and met this pastor and who didn't know I was coming that day. His secretary had messed up the schedule. It was kind of funny. So he was in all painter's clothes because they were rehabbing the theater into a church. And when I came home from work, I told my roommate, I said, I met the man I'm going to marry today. And she said, well, you just got home from work. That's really odd. You know, what does he do? I said, he's a pastor. And she's like, okay. And she's like, where? And I said, in the inner city of Detroit. And she's like, well, that's even more interesting. And she's like, what kind of church? I said, well, it was formerly a XXX pornographic theater and they converted it into a church. And
better all the time.
Yeah. And I said, you know, and God told me I'm going to marry him. Well, realize I'm still not saved at this point. I'm searching for God, kind of not knowing I'm searching for God. So I went home and told her that's the man I'm going to marry. And she's like, well, how did you know? I said, I just know. So I went back the next day to pick up the financial statements from Pastor Tim Delena. And he just shared with me and gave me a book at the end. Like he just asked me all these questions. How did I grow up? What kind of relationship did I have with my parents? What kind of relationship with God, the church? And he gave me a book at the end of our meeting. It was Josh McDowell's book called More Than a Carpenter. And I went home and read the whole book from the front to the back. And it basically presents Christ and says, Jesus is either a lunatic or a liar. Or he's Lord. You have to pick. He's one of the three. He can't be a great teacher. He can't be, all wise and knowing, and he has to be one of the three. And I said, all right, God, I prayed the one paragraph prayer at the end of the book. And I said, God, I've been looking for you my whole life. If you're real, show me. And I went to church that weekend, to the same church I'd go to probably once a month when I would start feeling guilty, and it was fireworks going off in the church. The pastor was preaching Ananias and Sapphira, which had been in the book. And it was like, oh my gosh, you're real, God. Like, you're not just in a book, you're real, and you're showing off right now. And I don't even know what to do. I wanted to run out of the building. And so about 2 weeks later, I was calling the church to speak to Pastor Tim Delena about the loan. And I said, in case you're interested, I read the book that you gave me front to back. I prayed the prayer at the end, and I went to church on Sunday. He about fell off his chair. And he said, we need to meet. So we met, and he gave me a life application Bible. I don't know, it felt like it was about this thick, right? Because it has like a Cliff Note, Bible explanation for every verse. So if you're reading one verse, you can read a footnote on it that gives you further information. And I was like inhaling it. Like, I would read that Bible I would run home from work, or not run. I guess I'd drive home from work fast, get home at 7. I would read the Bible from 7 to 10. I was like inhaling it, like all made sense, and things were clicking, and God was really working. And, this whole time, Tim is thinking, this girl Tim's not saying this is my wife, because I'm a new believer. I'm a new convert. He's a pastor in a church. And I just, God spoke to me. That was my husband, but I just kind of set that aside and said, let me focus on my walk with God. And I just kept reading and reading and reading. And then I started going to early morning prayer at the church. And then I got filled with the Holy Spirit. And then I got water baptized. And then I just kept taking like those next steps. And then we, maybe Thanksgiving, I got saved in April. By Thanksgiving, we were kind of hanging out in groups together with Tim. I think I'm combining the two stories, actually, but it was a radical salvation. I went from not knowing God to him completely ripping the rug from under me, turning my life upside down. And I had a true revelation of him.
Wow. This is such an interesting story, because having that first revelation, this is your husband, and then coming to salvation after that. How is it hard not to mix your own hopes and fears, or like God and a potential husband? Was that confusing in your mind?
It was made more confusing that Tim was confused, because he's like, how can I like a new, once we eventually kind of started hanging out together, he's like, I can't like a new believer. Like, I'm a pastor of a church. And so he was very cautious, and I had never, liked anybody being saved. So it was, it's not the way the world normally dates, so to speak. So it was, but I kept thinking, if God told me that, then God's going to take care of the situation, because it's certainly nothing that I had to do with it. I just showed up for work that day and had enough faith to read this book that this person I was completely mesmerized by gave me, and then looked for God in all the situations. So I had to continually rely on God for quite a while, because I was like, if you spoke this, certainly Tim's not speaking this. So if you spoke this, you're going to have to make it come to pass.
Absolutely. Hey, Cindy, let's pick up the story where, so you've met through work. He gave you a Bible, you've read it, you gave your heart to the Lord, filled with the Spirit. But then you said a few months later, you started hanging out in small groups. Can you pick up the story from there?
Sure. We started going, well, we would have Friday night prayer nights, and a lot of times you'd have missionaries in. And so we would take the missionaries out to dinner, whoever attended a bunch of people from the prayer group. So we would start going out with a bunch of different couples and missionaries and go out to eat on Friday night. And that's when we kind of started hanging out together. So I got to know Tim that way in a very large group setting. But, and I just kind of, him being a pastor, he'd had a long line of girls that had said, God spoke to me that I'm going to marry you. And so that was for sure something I was never going to tell him. I didn't tell him this, hey, can we start hanging out? Because God told me I'm going to marry you, because I knew he'd be running for the hills. So it was a very cautious, slow approach. But God did quicken that shortly thereafter.
Yes. So at what point did he know?
It's funny, over time, it gets closer and closer to when we met, but he literally was so guarded and cautious. He really waited quite a while. And finally, we started hanging out a lot in groups. And he had about 3 pastors in Michigan that he used as, kind of his sounding board. And he finally went to him and he goes, look, I have feelings for this girl. She's a new convert. I'm not sure what to do. And they literally walked through his fears. Like, why are you so fearful? Why are you so cautious? Are you afraid of overall commitment? Or are you? And he's like, absolutely not. But like, I don't want to be unequally yoked. And so one of the, he's been in Christ a really long time, me a couple months. And so one of the mentors to him said, look, Tim, if God is in this, he's going to, in essence, fast track her like I was being fast tracked at the bank. She's reading the Bible 3 hours a night. Her life is completely turned upside down. I like to do things fast, I guess, when I do them. I got my MBA, I got it fast. And so he said, if God is in this, he's going to do this fast. He's going to mature her in the faith faster, as fast as he needs, if she's the one for you. And so we just kept it cautious. We hung out in large groups. And I did attend every 7 a.m. prayer meeting. I always say it was 50% to pray and 50% so I could see the cute pastor, which God honored anyway. And then I think we officially maybe started dating in like March. And again, I say official, that was like we would go out with another couple, not a group. We never called it dating. He was still very cautious, because he had also always made a pledge that he would never kiss a girl or tell her that he loved them until he put a ring on their finger. So, coming from now, 25 years later, you watch TV and people profess love and do all sorts of things, way earlier in relationships. And we had a very old-fashioned, in some ways, because he didn't share those feelings, and he didn't say the I love you, oh, is she going to say it back? Because to him, like, he really meant he was never going to say that until there was a ring on my finger. And, I had a lot of friends that were a little freaked out that I had changed so radically in a short period of time. And, I said, there's certain things I won't do anymore with you, but I can list you 20. I'll go to restaurants, bowling, shopping, movies, like all these other things are awesome. And I did lose some friends, but the friends that really stuck with me, the ones that said, I see a new joy in you that, before your joy was based on circumstances. Did you have a good day? Did you have a bad day? How did you feel? And now they said, I don't know what it is that's changed about you, but you have a new joy, and you have like a balance. You have you're more balanced. You're more easygoing is not the right word, but you just exude like confidence, but not in yourself. And I said, yeah, because I finally figured out who I am in God.
Yeah. That's amazing. What were some of the challenges after, excuse me, after you married? Sorry. From, someone who had walked with the Lord a long time, spiritually mature, and you were coming into certain, maybe for the first time questions, testings. How were those challenges worked out in the early years of marriage so that there was respect given both sides to two points of view?
A couple things. First of all, my husband Tim never put things on me that God put on him. So for instance, he gets up and prays every morning from 5 to 6. I am a night owl. And so he never said, oh, you must get up with me and pray from 5 to 6, because that's what I've always done, And so he let me find my own way in Christ instead of putting all of everything God put on him on me, because that would have been crippling as a new believer, as a new wife, and just as who God created me to be. I can get up at 8 and pray. It doesn't have to be 5, and God will hear me. Or I can do it at night, and so that was the main thing that was great. And we carried it on to our children also, is not putting what God speaks to us on them and letting them kind of find their own way. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but they're finding it on their own versus us putting it on them. But the first year, like he'd been in pastoring. He had 7 years before Revival Tabernacle that he was in the ministry. Then he had probably 5 years before we met at Revival Tabernacle. So he'd been counseling 12 years. So he's really good at talking issues through. He's really good at confronting issues to make sure they're dealt with. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Well, I come from a family where it's first of all, it's very hard to offend my family. It just is. He's from Italians. They're offended at everything. You looked at me funny. You didn't finish your meal. And so we came from very different backgrounds. And so if he would confront something, I would get all defensive. And, the first half of the argument was me defending. And he's like, you don't have to defend it. We just need to talk through it, talk through expectations, apologize, and move on. And so I wanted to be done with the conversation in about 45 seconds. And he wanted to take about 45 minutes. And so we had to figure out how to communicate and talk through those things. I was just sharing with someone the other day a funny story that after the first week we were home from the honeymoon, I cooked every night this wonderful chicken dinner for my husband, or spaghetti, because I only knew how to make 2 things. And by the end of the week, I was just crying profuse. And he's like, what is wrong? I'm like, I can't cook a homemade meal for you every night like your mom did. And he looked at me and he goes, I didn't ask you to. Like, why would you assume that I expected this? And it started our communication because I was all upset I couldn't do it. And he's like, we didn't do it when we were dating. What changed? And I said, I guess I had this connotation that you had the expectation. And he's like, no, we need to talk through these things. And so it was a lot of communication growth our first year, and a lot of sometimes processing with other pastors. We had a fight over buying a new car once, and it was hysterical. We'd each bought 5 cars at this point in our life or more. And we just dug our heels in. And we had a guest pastor that Sunday, and we went up to him after. We're like, we need to speak to you, please. And he was cracking up. But we've just learned, if we can't resolve it ourselves, then we find someone that can help us resolve it.
Right. Yes. So true. Just quick question, but what do your parents think about you marrying a pastor? Because they wouldn't have understood maybe pastor or this role that you were marrying into. What did they think?
Well, they were initially, I have to be honest, they were initially a little skeptical when we were going out, because that was also during David Koresh on the news.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're looking at someone on the news that has a commune and all the people are solely, worshiping basically this person that they're with on the commune. If for those that might not remember that far back. And so it was a kind of a weird sect of I don't even know what the word is. It wasn't Christianity. So just this weird sect. And then they're looking at my severe lifestyle change and they're kind of trying to reconcile. But once they met him, the first time they were probably like, he's so friendly, like this is so strange. And is he really like that? But then the second time they met him, he's exactly the same. The third time they met him, he's exactly the same. And I think I can actually say that he's their favorite son-in-law. He is also their only son-in-law, but they love him and they love what we do, but they're not believers themselves. And so there is sometimes that struggle to relate.
A growing issue and a very important issue, is the number of single women in the church, and they want to live for God, love him. And then the lack of single young men sometimes, or they are very young believers. There just seems to be a lot of obstacles for that. What do you have any insight into this situation, and what would you like to speak into that situation then?
Well, I think times have changed a little bit. When Tim and I were getting married, we were considered late. I was 27. I'm his much younger wife. And he was 32, and all in his 20s, people, well-meaning friends, pastors, every time he went somewhere to speak, they were trying to set him up with somebody because, she was going to be the perfect one for him. Because in that, 25 years ago, you got married in your 20s. Now it's 30s, late 30s. It keeps getting, years and years later. But back then he was very late in getting married, and his parents were like, you're working too hard. You need to have, time to have fun and go find a wife. We want grandkids, but I think through it all, it seems like such a long period of time when you're single, but the only thing worse than being single and lonely is being married to it's not the wrong person, because once you marry him, God says that is the right person, but not choosing wisely and rushing God's decision and being unequally yoked. And so now you're fighting with things that God didn't really, he wished you wouldn't be fighting with. You married an unbeliever and now you're unequally yoked. You're uneven and you're fighting spiritually. Even in the marriage, like everything else isn't hard enough. Now you have to fight spiritually in your marriage. And so usually when I tell single people, you don't want marriage is hard and the world is tough. Satan is busy. And the last thing you want to do is then have to come home to a fight every day. You're fighting at work, or you're fighting with the public school system, or you're fighting, and then you have to come home to a fight because you want to go to church and your husband doesn't want to go to church. And so it's very important to make sure that you are going to have a long, if you want to be married 50 years, you better make sure it's the right person. And so, and again, and now it's 30s and 40s that people are getting married. And so now with the divorce rates as crazy as they are, I would say, get to know God and make sure you know your value in God, so that you never have to worry about a marriage partner being the person who gives you validation. And that will make you an amazing mate when you do get married.
Right. Do you believe in dating?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have 4 kids. They might be listening. I do, but I would say cautiously, because I think you learn a lot about yourself when you date, what you're looking for. Are you looking for the right thing, or is that something that God is supposed to provide for you? And we don't let our kids date until they're 16. And then there's a lot of parameters. My husband has to interview them for sure. One, he made provide tax returns for their first interview before he could ask one of our daughters out. Because he said, if you can't handle money, then you can't handle my daughter.
Does he interview Christians?
With my daughter, if I can't trust you with your own money. So
exactly. Does he interview Christians' girlfriends?
It is slightly a double standard, but Christian just got a girlfriend. It's his first one. So, but he's known her 5 years. So that gives you kind of an example.
No interview.
Yeah, there was no interview because we knew her. And
sure.
So we had a 5-year interview versus, a 50-minute interview. But it's kind
absolutely.
of that. I don't want to say, so there's no like cut and dry, no dating, but it's very cautious. It's very, like when my husband and I dated, there's no, I love yous, there's no kissing, because all that does is light the fuel. And,
exactly.
And then, so people say, oh, you're old fashioned, you can't even kiss when you date. Well, it's not because it's anti-biblical, but it's like, if we want to be dating to done in a pure context, kissing just lights fires that can't be put out. And so we ask them to commit to that. And initially they'll think we're crazy till they get married. And then when they have kids, they'll be like, that was the greatest thing my parents ever did. So that's like for my teens, but I do believe in dating because I think you kind of find what you're looking for. But again, in a serious context where you're not just dating to go out and have fun socially, but it's someone that you would seriously are considering for a long-term commitment before you would, just engage in a dating behavior, I guess.
Right. You know what I think people love about your story is that it sounds like you were, Pastor Tim was just serving God in his place, and everybody telling him he shouldn't be looking. But the moment he met you, he was serving God. So kind of that focus, and you were about to encounter God. And it's just so wonderful how, that how the Lord brought it together. I think it's something that people love, these kind of stories. They feel, they don't feel like what's going on today. And somehow they really love to hear this story. Is there any advice that you would give for people who are living in a very modern context, but they love elements of your story? What advice would you give to people?
I would say the fun part is mine had a fairy tale ending. So we dated, the way we got engaged in New York, Tim used to come and speak for Times Square Church once a month. And he had come in one weekend and Pastor Dave said, can you come in the next weekend again? So Tim, this was when it was easier to fly. He would preach our Sunday morning at Revival Tabernacle in Detroit, hop a plane, and then speak at the 3 and 6 on Sunday. And so he said, if you come, he bribed him. He said, if you come back again this weekend, I'll fly your girlfriend in and she can stay with my secretary, Barb Mackery. So Tim was like, this is it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to propose to her in New York. So he proposed to me, like we had a whole Saturday in New York. We did, we went shopping at the, is it Southside Seaport? Is that what it's called? I always mess up the name.
Yeah.
Bought me a dress. I wore it to dinner. We had dinner at Tavern on the Green. The lady put balloons at our table and he goes, what are those for? She goes, well, someone told me it's a special occasion. And he goes, no, it's not a special occasion at all. And I was like, I kind of thought having dinner at Tavern on the Green was a special occasion. We almost got in a fight.
Absolutely.
Then we walked through Central Park to Rockefeller. I have a point with all this, but we went to Rockefeller Plaza. We took a horse and carriage ride. He got out on one knee from the carriage, had a ring and proposed to me and told me he loved me. And that's the first time we ever kissed, was at Rockefeller Plaza. And so then we had we were engaged in June and married in November, and Brother Dave did our wedding. And so, because they're close family friends with Tim's parents, as well as we've been, kind of guest speakers with Times Square Church for so many years. So all that to say, it was this fairy tale day, everything from when I got saved to when I got married was a year and a half. Like, that's short. Like, so when I say fast track, God did some major work in me between those dates. And all of that is awesome and like fairy tale-ish and horse and carriage. And oh my gosh, the first time they ever kissed was in a carriage at Rockefeller Plaza. But all of it started with just being in the right place at the right time, doing what you're supposed to be doing. He was supposed to be painting the church. I was supposed to be going to work, but I was open to reading the book. So instead of like going to a speed dating night where you spend 50 seconds with each person and try to find someone, or filing my online dating application with, these are the things I love to do. And trying to jump the gun on God's work. We were just doing the things we were supposed to be doing and let God do it. Again, Tim would have rather been married at 22 than 32. But God used his 20s to do some deep work in him, he did a lot of reading and studying during that time that, is paying all of its dividends now. And I wasn't saved. So if he had married at 22, it wasn't going to be me, because I wasn't even saved. And so I guess the encouragement is, if you're just doing what you're supposed to be doing, instead of trying to I get in trouble with that sometimes too, instead of trying to make stuff happen, instead of speed dating, instead of going online, instead of hanging out at the wrong places to going to bars to try to find someone cute, or, I don't know, running through Central Park and checking everybody out. You just stay faithful to what God has called you to do. You serve, you go on missions trips, you're at the church, you're joining connect groups. You'll meet the person that God has for you, instead of trying to make it happen yourself.
Yes, absolutely. What do you, now that you're married, has there been any marriage books or things that you've read that really were key and instrumental to you guys understanding the art of marriage?
On the first one, and you'll laugh because it's so basic, but the 5 love languages was kind of a revelation to us initially in marriage, because he was always, my beautiful wife, Cindy, my beautiful wife, Cindy. Well, words of affirmation are not my love language. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're married to me. You're stuck with me. You have to think I'm beautiful. That doesn't really mean much to me, And we found out that in this book, The 5 Love Languages, that my love language is time, which of course he has the least of. Now also but mine's not quality of time either. It's not like, let's sit face to face and talk for 15 minutes. No, mine's quantity of time, which is even harder for him. And we used to have a date night that we still laugh about, but we both used to play tennis. And our date night was, we would drive the 30 minutes to the tennis club. While I played in my women's league, he went to the coffee shop and read his Bible. While he played in the men's league, I went to the coffee shop and read my Bible, and we drove home. And some people are like, how is that a date night? You're not even playing tennis together. And I said, but we went there together. We shared our experiences up there and back. We both got extra time in the Bible. I don't know, it worked for us. And it was, if he takes me to Costco and pushes the cart around while I throw everything in it, that's time to me. And, that could have taken years to figure out, because it sounds like that can't even be true. It's that easy. I can go to Costco with you and you consider that I'm helping, I'm showing you love. And then what it also realized was you'd think he's a confident pastor. His is words of affirmation. And so I am not, because it doesn't mean much to me, I'm not well-versed in using words of affirmation. And so it really challenged me to learn how to affirm him, even in things like, I've learned how, if I don't like something, I've learned different ways, instead of just blurting it, what's for dinner? And he goes, oh, let's do Indian. Oh, I hate Indian. Like just little interactions like that can if I change the way that I say them, they can make our conversation go a lot smoother. Oh, that's a great idea. And then I know you love Indian food. I'm not really feeling that tonight. So I had to learn how to, start using a lot more words in my conversation instead of, doing like the text version of yes, no, maybe, yes, and learn how to be more wordy. That was probably the biggest influence, was that book. And it seems so easy, but really it helped us a lot.
Wow. Well, I mean, that book has helped a lot of people, and it's so insightful. We just 5 love languages, folks. If you haven't read that, and if you're in any kind of relationship, you want to read that. And it also helps you explain yourself, I think, a lot of times to other people. Sometimes, we can instinctively know more about the person we marry because we observe them, we live with them, and know a little less about ourselves.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So, and sometimes we have to learn ourselves through that person's eyes. So, that being said, was there any like very funny moments, or just like when this relationship was coming together shortly after, that you want to share with any funny standout moments?
I don't. There's literally so many. Sometimes you get to see at the pulpit from my husband through his illustrations, some humorous moments, even though he takes being in the pulpit very sobering and very serious. A lot of times he'll use illustrations that are funny, and while you're laughing, then he brings the biblical truth and kind of whacks you, and you're, oh, I didn't even see that coming. But he is funny. And he's silly with my kids. Like he's, when we'll FaceTime. The other night we were FaceTiming with my daughter and son, my oldest 2, and we were all cracking up. And it's that sense of humor that probably so there's not all that to say, there's not really one funny thing, but we have a lot of humor in our life because it kind of offsets the seriousness of what we do. We can't always be walking on eggshells because the day-to-day of people and their lives and eternity is so serious. We almost have to have that offset. That's why we love when we get together with you and Pastor Carter, is you need the offset of, I just need to laugh for a little bit and kind of make sure I'm balanced on both sides. And so we're always very silly with my kids, and try to make sure we're balancing the seriousness of ministry with being funny. So there's funny stuff that happens, and a lot of times you'll hear them in sermons, a lot of the funny stories. And even though you hear about him, like someone had asked me once, don't you get tired of Pastor Tim talking about you in the pulpit? And I said, well, if you listen carefully, he never puts me in a bad light. So if I can be used as an illustration in a sermon somehow, he's careful not to put me in a bad light when he does it, so it's fine with me. He has my permission, So I guess that's a long-winded answer, but we try to have a lot of fun to offset just the seriousness of being in ministry.
I really think that's a really great point, because I think a sense of humor and compatible senses of humor is so important, sometimes overlooked. And, here at Summit, we're encouraging people when they're here that they don't pursue a relationship, because, as you said, when you pursue the Lord, you find out who you are, you put everything on hold and kind of establish that relationship. You make much better choices. And one of them is people with have a sense of humor, because laughter surely goes a long way. And I think that more marriages, if they go, we've got to get that back in there. We've got to reintroduce humor and laugh together. It really, really goes a long way. Our first date, so we didn't meet when we were saved, and our first date was so Pastor Carter bought a box of Kentucky Fried Chicken and decided that we would meet in a phone booth and eat the chicken in a phone booth. So yeah, that was our first date.
In a phone booth. That's interesting.
Phone booth. So maybe some people don't even know what phone booths are, but yeah. one thing I think that people love is the fact that your marriage seems very living, very real, very attractive. What advice do you give to your kids or the younger generation of how you keep a marriage living and, just gets better over time?
I think the two things would be, one, what says I love you to your spouse, which is basically the 5 love languages. You have to figure out how you can continually be filling them, like making deposits at a bank. You can't just keep making withdrawals. I need you, I need you, I need you, I need you. You have to keep making deposits. But then the second one is we resolve everything. And there's nothing worse than trying to go through a discussion or a miscommunication, and you have 5 weeks of baggage attached to it. So you're not just unraveling one issue, now you're unraveling, the reason I did this is I was mad at you last week when you did this, and then the reason I did that was because I was mad at you the week before, and now you're like, how do you even discuss an issue when there's so much baggage attached to it? So, don't let the sun go down on your wrath is truly what we do. No matter if, you can't just say, I can't believe you're offended by that, I'm sorry, and go to bed. Like, no, it has to be like a discussion, has to be talked through. It has to be we ask for forgiveness, and then it's not brought up again. This isn't like, a lot of times the joke is, right, if someone says, well, we can't even get along anymore, what was the final straw? Oh, they left the cap off the toothpaste. I think that's an old illustration, but I think people know what it means. And it wasn't the cap off the toothpaste. It was the 50 other things before that you didn't resolve, you didn't talk through. Now you're walking on eggshells. And now, if you're bitter with someone, then your attitude turns bitter, and then they get bitter. It's just like this downward spiral. When does it end? And so to make sure that, each day has enough going on in it, we don't go to bed. Sometimes there's probably been less than a handful of times we've had to stay up till 2-3 in the morning talking through something. And yes, we're exhausted the next day, but if we don't resolve it, it drags on into the next day, and it impacts everything. And what a drag on everything else. There's enough going on each day. You can't be dragging the day before and the day before and the week before and the month before. You have to talk through the issues and kind of clear the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's even a debate among young people if they're really even desiring marriage anymore. And I think that a lot of people are just trying to, am I safer just staying single? And you have young people, your children are teens now, and relationships are huge to them. And I think that, first of all, what do you think, what would you have to say about the state, like this young generation that might be afraid of commitment? Is there anything that you could say in defense of marriage? What would you say to young girls that are listening about marriage? And then I have a second follow-up question to that.
These are tough ones. It's kind of like having kids though, right? They're amazing. There's very painful moments. There's very hard moments. There's some sleepless moments, but you wouldn't not have kids because the joy is 10 times, 100 times greater than the painful moments and the sleepless nights and the worry-filled nights or the pain of childbirth or whatever it is. It's the same with marriage. Marriage is God makes us better. It's someone that when you fall down, they can pick you up. And yeah, you can replace that with friendships and connect groups and mentors. But if God desire, if you desire to be married, God wants you to give you the desire of your heart. Because the problem is if you have that desire and you don't fulfill it in God, then you're going to look for it sometimes in the wrong places. So then you're hanging out in bars trying to find a social life, or you're going to clubs, or you're looking online in chat rooms where people are just making up things, and the devil will try to get you to duplicate it another way that's not biblical. And so there's kind of safety in doing it God's way, and a huge blessing when you do it God's way. And so as long as you're not hurrying the process, you know, you don't have to date when you're 12. You don't have to date at all if you don't want to, you know, or if it's not the right timing, if you're not the right mature status to be able to handle that type of relationship, then you just wait, and you wait until God presents that opportunity.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's an amazing answer. That's so well said. And it almost literally is answering the second part of this question, because I just wanted you to just speak to all the single women at Times Square Church right now that are in that place of, they see your beautiful story and your romantic story. They're in a place, they find themselves of waiting, maybe discouragement, maybe some, it's a tough time. And in the wisdom that you have, you know, working with people married, not single, is there a word that you just would like to say to the single women of Times Square Church?
You're not alone, I would say, is the word. The devil will tell you you're alone, you're lonely. I would say make sure, first of all, obviously your companionship is in God. Obviously work on that relationship the most, but you find someone that you can lock arms with, that can be your other half, that can lift you up when you're down, and you can lift them up when they're down. My illustration would be, a long time ago, I ran a marathon, and because somebody challenged me that I couldn't do it for $10. So maybe I don't have the most sense, but I took them on the challenge for $10 to run 26 miles. But I had to have a running partner to train with, because to run a marathon, I had to train 6 months minimum. I didn't want to run every day, but my schedule showed I had to run different things every day. Well, the days, it was miraculous. The days I didn't feel like running, I'm tired, I'm not going to. My partner was like, that's it, I've been waiting all day, let's go, get your running stuff on, I want to go run. And that's how it worked. And then the days where I was like, I was waiting all day, we're hitting 5 miles today, get your running shoes on. I don't feel like running. And I would make her run. And we had to do all those trainings in order to complete the marathon. I had no time goal. I just wanted to complete it without dying halfway through it. But we had to do the training schedule. And I would probably say that's a great illustration for being single. If you're lonely, you find a training partner. When you're lonely, you call them, go out for lunch. When they're lonely, they call you, you go out for coffee. You get to encourage one another, and it's doing it God's way versus doing it the way the world would have. Watch 6 more hours of TV, go hang out at the bar, get on a chat room, get addicted to pornography online. All these horrible ways the devil will take our eyes and make us go try to find that elsewhere. You find someone younger, older, they don't have to be exactly like you, but a kind of like a best friend, like a, I don't even remember the illustration, the term for it, but in the old days, they used to fight with someone back to back. That was their fighting.
Armor bearer.
Yeah.
An armor bearer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you're fighting in the front, they're fighting in the back, what you don't see. And you find someone like that, whether it's through a connect group at Times Square Church, whether it's your aunt who's been praying for you since you were 5, someone that you can direct some of those emotions and feelings towards. They know your heart. They know when you're lonely. They know when you're frustrated, but you can say, hey, let's go rock climbing today. Rock climbing. Yeah. We're going to go have fun, because the devil wants me to sit here and mope and tell me that I'm all alone. And I know I'm not. So we're going to go do something crazy. We're going to go rock climbing, and it's just throwing it back at the devil. And, I have a emoji I send to some friends, or I don't know if it's a meme or an emoji, or I'm not technologically savvy, but it's, all these karate chops, and take that, devil. You're not getting me today. You're not stealing my joy.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm lonely. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to go call someone. I'm going to take the initiative, and I'm going to call someone, and I'm going to go do something fun. Or I'm going to go minister to someone, or I'm going to go take cookies to my neighbors, because through ministry,
right, and to just keep doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To others, sometimes you can come out of your loneliness, because then when they're grateful, you're like, see, they needed me today. Somebody needed me.
Exactly. You know, your story, Cindy Delena, is so full of hope. It's so inspiring. I think even just going forward, it would be awesome for women to explore what are the art of friendship and how to have meaningful, deep relationships. Because as women, our genius is relationships. Our genius is friendship, and not let the devil get in between that. But your story is so amazing and it's so inspiring. And I'm so glad you got a chance, just a whole broadcast to talk about it, because there's so much in it. And we just want to say we love talking with you. It was so awesome. And who knows what our next interviews are coming, but you help a whole lot and we love you. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Maybe one of these times I'll get to interview you.
Oh, scary.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us. And it was great to, Cindy, finally hear part 2 of the story, the salvation story, and how you met Pastor Tim. We're so grateful that you both could join us today. Also, the singles topic, Pastor Teresa, awesome question, because as you know, we have a lot of ladies from all different ages and backgrounds who do deal with that and sometimes struggle with that. So it was great to touch on that. Cindy, thank you for words of wisdom, encouragement, including for myself, and just the support that we have at TSC Women from both of you. In terms of helping those who are single, those who are newly married, dealing with marriage issues, those who've been married for a while, just, understand the season they're in and what they need to do and focus on at this time. I did want to say, I totally agree, Cindy, with what you were saying about if you just focus on what the Lord is asking you to do, or called you to, rather than going out and looking around. Usually that's the best way that he brings someone and brings to you. I think of like all the Bible stories when the women are either at the well getting water, they're in the field, they're doing their job, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then all of a sudden, the Boaz shows up or the guy comes, and it just kind of makes sense to me that way too. But thanks for touching.
Exactly. Or you go on to be Deborah and lead the army. Who knows?
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, love you, Michelle. You're doing a great job.
So ladies, again, we hope you were blessed today with today's speaker session. We're really glad you could join us. Our next one will be on Saturday, November 7th at 10 a.m. With that, I think we're good. We're done. And we might have to do a part 3 where Cindy does interview Pastor Teresa. That sounds good. I think we'll enjoy that. But have a great day.